Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Movement. We apologize for the late start, but we promise you that being late doesn't mean that the content would not flow today. And so I want to welcome everyone to this, the fourth in the series of The Movement. This is a program organized by the People's Action Movement to basically introduce you to its candidates in a forum where you can ask questions, you can raise your concerns. And so we'll be here for another 2 hours, thereabout. And at 11:15, your questions would be included. My name is Laverne Keynes, and I'm your usual host for this program. This morning, we will be speaking with Mr. Jonel Powell. He's the outgoing parliamentary representative for constituency number 2. And I believe that those of you who are living in that constituency would be quite interested this morning to hear what it is he has to say, what his plans are for the continuation of the work he has started in Parliament. Of course, we knew that his term has been a little bit abbreviated based on the fact that things have turned in the last couple of months, and we're now looking to an election in the coming weeks. And so Mr. Powell would engage you very shortly, and then I would engage him, and then we will include your interaction at around 11:15. Of course, we know that Jonel is one of the youngest candidates on the slate of candidates for the People's Action Movement, but he has also been in the arena, if you will, for quite a while. He's currently the chairman of the People's Action Movement. That and a lot more. I'll allow him a few minutes to, tell us who he is. Of course, this is a sales pitch, if you will. And so I want you to take notes and when the time is right, come back and give us your questions and your concerns so that Jonel would address them. Welcome, Jonel. And if you can just give us a couple opening shots.
Thank you, Laverne. Good morning to you. Good morning to all of the good people who are listening to us here on Win FM 98.9. Whether you're following us on the radio or via the internet, pleasant good morning to you. It's amazing to be here, and it's amazing to be a PAM. For those who may not know, my name is Jonel Powell. I am the PAM, the chairman of the People's Action Movement and the PAM candidate for constituency number 2. I've been the parliamentary representative for constituency number 2 for just about 2 years now, since the 2020 elections. And I have held the post of Minister of Education, Youth, Sport and Culture for the majority of the last 2 years. We are unfortunately back into the throes of a general election here in St. Kitts and Nevis. And I am offering myself up again to be re-elected to the position of parliamentary representative for the good people of Central Bastia, to continue the work that was started, to continue the mission that I was on, and to build on that vision that I have for the constituency and for the people in Central Bastia constituency number 2. That vision encompasses a number of different things. Central to that is the redevelopment of Central Bastia, both physically, aesthetically, and socially, spiritually. What do I mean by that? Central Bastia basically represents downtown Bastia, the main section of the city of Bastia, our capital. And unfortunately, over the years, that area has been allowed to deteriorate significantly. And so it is my vision, it is my passion, my goal to redevelop Central Bastia in particular and spread to East Bastia, to West Bastia, and hopefully use the successful practices in other areas of St. Kitts and Nevis. So if I start from the Irish Town Bay Road, for example, that is a road that has been undermined for some time by the water, the Caribbean Sea. It is a cabinet that actually, I think in the first term of Team Unity, had actually approved a capital project to redo that road. So the road is being undermined. Anytime the residents on the Irish Town Bay Road will be able to tell you, anytime we have a hurricane or a a strong storm, water can actually get into their houses, into their living rooms. I've seen this. I've visited residents down there and you see water and sand in their living rooms. So how do we fix this? I'm proposing that we widen the road. It's a main thoroughfare into downtown Bastille, to the market, particularly on a Saturday, it's problem zone there, to the ferry terminal, the bus terminal. And so I'm proposing to widen that road to allow for better flow of traffic, to build a boardwalk on the seaside of that road. The boardwalk would help to protect the newly built road infrastructurally, as well as to provide a nice aesthetic avenue for persons, local and residents alike, to be able to take a stroll along that Irish Town Bay Road from the bus and ferry terminals from Port Zante right up to the Cenotaph in the Fort Lands area. I am picturing a boardwalk with 3 to 4 little kiosks or shops on it overlooking the water, where residents can have, maybe 3 or 4 lucky residents can have opportunities to have a little bar, a little something, where we can go and sit down and have a drink, take your girlfriend for a walk along the boardwalk at the sunset, something like that. And I have contemplated in discussions, because I've actually used the last 2 years to engage persons on this particular project. And one of the things that has been suggested in terms of enhancing that entire project is to do, is to do some land reclamation beyond the boardwalk itself, similar to what was done with Port Zante, not on the same scale, but similar, where we can create a new shopping complex. Again, an opportunity for more commercial opportunities for residents and, but hopefully for people from Central Bastille in particular. What we don't want is, and this is no bad reflection on them, but as Port Zante, because of its price, became basically wholly owned by, or to a large extent, mainly owned by foreign persons, we want this new project to be solely owned by locals. This is an opportunity for locals to go and actually own these stores. We need to empower our people, our young people, our entrepreneurs, our business persons locally. At the end of that, where there's a big rock pier, as they call it, or groin, almost in the same little COVID OTA, there's actually a little beach down there. So the intention is to cut back some of the trees that you have there, enhance that beach. On the top, erect a few more bars or restaurants, so we have almost like a mini strip there. This is a way of enhancing that Irish Town Bay Road. If you're coming from Nevis on a ferry, it's the first thing you see when you come into town. If you're coming in on a cruise ship, that is the first thing you see in St. Kitts. And you know what they say about first impressions. Part of that enhancement includes empowering the persons who live in those areas, who own property in those areas, to get opportunities to raise the standard, the quality of their properties in tandem with that. And so I believe that the best way to do so, and based on discussions with all necessary technocrats, is to establish a Bastille Development Corporation. I think more fundamentally is using that corporation to address the empty house lots, the many empty house lots, abandoned buildings that we see around the Irish Town, McKnight, Market Street areas in particular. Even going as far as into Greenlands is becoming quite bad. These abandoned buildings, empty lots, have created significant problems for residents, from security issues to health issues, from rodents and garbage being wasted there. It makes the place just look generally dirty, and how could you feel good living in a community, living next to a spot like that? And so, using the necessary legislation that is actually on the books, I'm proposing that we use that corporation to go use local manpower from the areas to clean these lots. Most of them, they're what you call family land. They're caught up in somebody died and they're caught up in some sort of litigation. Well, not even litigation. There's some sort of administrative process, and no one has been paying property tax. In many instances, the property tax owed to the government exceeds the value of the property. And so I am proposing that we utilize the Public Health Act, for example, get local manpower, get the guys in the area to come clean out these areas. We're necessary to demolish some of these derelict buildings, and as a part of a wider program, the government can acquire most of these properties and make these available as commercial and residential opportunities for people in the area. We allocate lands in St. Kitts based on constituency, Central Bassia being the tiniest one. We often hear there's no more land in Central Bassia, but we're looking at all these empty lots that have been like that since before I was born. And so we need to make these lots available to persons who can actually utilize them. You might have a piece of family land, or you might be involved in a family who has a piece of family land, and you're asking yourself, well, if the government takes my land, what happens? Whatever outstandings there may be, if, for example, after we take out the what it costs to clean the property and what is owed to inland revenue, if there's a balance, those monies will be put into a fund, into escrow, so that whenever you're able to sort out whatever probate issue it is, those monies are there for that family to access, so they're not losing anything. So that is the plan. I've actually met with persons from NHC, I've met with persons from planning. We've actually identified a particular area from the Pricklepear Alley, from College Street, Market Street, Pricklepear Alley, coming westward to about Westbourne Gut as an initial area to really look at. Anybody who lives in that area, who goes on there, knows that particular sort of area is rampant with a lot of these properties. Just a few years ago, we had a serious fire that could have done a lot more damage in an area like that. These areas that we can fix up and make livable for more persons. And then there's general things like the finishing the football or futsal facility up in the Pine Garden area, which is a project that I started. We identified it. We were able to locate a piece of land, and I was certainly in the process of clearing the land to start works there when I would have left the government a few months ago. And so the intention is to continue advocating for projects such as the fixing of the New Road Family Park, which was a project which was rushed in time to be completed before the 2015 election, and because it was rushed for the election, it was not done properly. That project, which is a nice idea, the park is a good idea. It services a lot of families and young, kids in particular, not just from the New Road area. People come from all over the island to go there with the kids. But because it was rushed, there was some undermining. The land had not been packed and filled properly, and so you had sinks developing in the land. After a few years, the equipment started breaking because of the salt in the air, the direct sunlight, all of that, and it became dangerous. So I was able to lobby to the Taiwanese in particular, who had assisted with the construction of that park, to come in and assist us to fix it. And so through my lobbying and through the assistance of partners in government, we were able to get the Taiwanese embassy to agree to invest some $800,000 in fixing that park and changing the equipment and all that. I can report that they've already ordered the equipment, and as far as I know, the last update I had was everything was being shipped. Just so that people understand, the government of Taiwan is funding that particular project. It's not being funded by the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. There's no money that is being passed from Taiwan to St. Kitts and Nevis for this. The government of Taiwan has allocated 800,000, and they're managing that. There is a Taiwanese firm, construction company, which had built the new Malcolm Gishard Park in Nevis, who are going to be building out the New Road Family Park as well. I'm hoping that they'll be able to bring on some local labor to assist so that, everybody can get a piece of the pie, but they're the ones who are going to be dealing with the construction and all of that. Just below that, I'm hoping that in the second term, we are going to be able to build out my vision of a leisure park, which is more than just for little kids. I'm hoping that we can put in a community center for the New Road and Pine Garden, Shadwell area right there, and just have garden space, benches, trees for persons to sit down on and relax. I envision a walking track around the park. If you ask me, I'm talking about that space just above the airport, behind where there is a bus stop. You'll see some big trucks at the end there. When you turn up on the double road, I'm talking about that green space. And I'm envisioning a walking track around it so that persons can go there and walk at mornings as opposed to walking on the road with the traffic. And just general redevelopment of our sporting complexes, many of which exist in Central Bastia. We've done some work with Dorset Park. We want to expand the building in Dorset Park and create a real community center there so that more persons can utilize meeting spaces and that sort of thing. I think that it is long overdue that we really redevelop Basketball City. There have been several proposals for indoor basketball complexes here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I believe that we can utilize Basketball City and the various accesses to it, including for parking. And when we are completed building that indoor basketball facility, I can think of no one else on St. Kitts and Nevis that facility can be named after but James Barman Hanley from the Market Street area, who is synonymous with the Rams Harmonite Hitters basketball club, a basketball club that I played for many years in the junior A and premier divisions, and Barman has really made such a significant contribution to basketball and development of basketball and basketball players. He has personally invested in young men in this country to make them who they are today, including myself. And so I think it would be a fitting tribute to name that new indoor facility after him. And then they're just, those general policies in terms of housing. I identified how and where we could put housing in Central Bastia, but utilizing the policies of a PAM and CCM government to ensure that the housing is adequate, to ensure that the housing is affordable, and to ensure that the persons who deserve the houses are the ones who actually get it. We're not seeing that. Persons who ought to really be getting mortgages to the bank are getting NHC houses, which according to the NHC Act are really for low-income persons. And for political favor, we see higher income persons getting access to those houses. And I believe this is one of the ways in which we can really level the playing field. This is something that we've seen. This is one of the issues that we have had, which is why myself, along with my 5 colleagues, walked away from the Team Unity administration. The persons that need access to social programs such as housing, the poverty alleviation program, which is the $500 a month program, the STEP, were not the ones who were getting access. We were seeing too much picking and choosing. The persons, when you look at the 15 houses that we got free from Venezuela, all 15 houses went to persons in Mansion. What about that single mother with 4 children living on Fort Thomas Road who is living in in a less than adequate house, why couldn't she get access to one of these houses for her and her family to live in? And so that must be the focus, ensuring that the people who deserve it and need it the most are the ones who actually benefit from these programs. So I think I've said quite a mouthful, more than just introductory statements. But I thought, why not just get into it? I know you've been making some notes, and I can expand or continue.
Right. Thank you so very much. It has been quite a mouthful, quite a comprehensive mouthful at that of future projects, as well as projects that you were able to build out during your, as I said, your abbreviated tenure. And surely there's more work to be done. And I guess this program, one of the objectives I would imagine is to say to your constituents, I have a job to finish. So, allow me to finish the job. I did take a lot of notes. It's interesting. You captured it as the redevelopment of Central Bastille. And it reminded me some of the ideas that you shared just now of a trip I'd made to Italy a few years ago. And I thought of an Irish town because there was so many little cobblestone alleyways, but there was a shop there. And these were attraction to people who were visiting.
Correct.
And I thought, well, why can't we do the same thing here? And people were able to share the history of those little districts. And so I like the idea because that is what to me attracts people to an island, and especially visitors. So that it's not just about the people of the community, just benefiting, but being able to share the history of their little slice of town. And so I really love that idea. But we're going to take a small break now because I believe you left the listeners taking quite a lot of notes themselves. So we're going to take a break, and then when we come back, we'll get into, I guess we'll drill down into a couple of the future projects that you just listed, which I guess a lot of people want to hear more on.
Okay.
So we'll do that when we come back.
The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participant or caller and do not reflect the views of WinFM 98.9. WinFM reserves the right to disconnect any caller who infringes the law or offends the right of any person. The station will also refuse to take any call from any person who, in WinFM's considered opinion, is likely to expose the station to liability for statements made on the air.
Good morning, and welcome back to The Movement. This is a series that has been organized by the People's Action Movement to present to members of the listening public, whether they are in St. Kitts and Nevis or somewhere in the diaspora, their candidates that are vying for the federal election, which are due sometime very soon. And this morning we are dialoguing with Jonel Powell. He is, of course, the last representative of the good people of constituency number 2, Central Bastille. And he just shared quite a comprehensive program of projects that he is hoping to complete when the people of Central Bastille give him another chance to do so. And I rather like the whole terminology, as he put it, of the redevelopment of Central Bastille. And, coupling this with the fact that there ought to be a Bastille Development Corporation. But I recall that there was a beautiful Bastille committee, Jonel. What did not happen with this beautiful Bastille committee that could not happen with this Bastille Development Corporation?
Well, my understanding of the beautiful Bastille committee was that it was set up to really try and maintain a lot of the green spaces around downtown. It looked at the fact that as is referred to the historic city of Bastille, there's certain building codes in place where the architecture must be consistent with the old Georgian architecture from colonial days. And it dealt more with sort of keeping the place clean. The Bastille Development Corporation that I am talking about goes a bit deeper than that. It goes a bit further than that in terms of being empowered to do things like actually go and clean private properties as opposed to just green areas which are owned by the government. The ability to engage with, whether it be contractors, architects, engineers, to plan out how we're gonna redevelop, where we put housing opportunities, what types of housing. So because the land is limited, for example, everybody might not be able to get a standalone house with yard space. So it may be townhouses, it may be apartment complexes like the Gardens Housing Project. Planning, the corporation would be responsible for the planning and execution of this whole redevelopment of Bastille.
Great. I'm glad you made that distinction. But let's just reel back a little bit, because so a lot of what you shared just now are really, very futuristic projects that I guess would in time make it to the party's manifesto as well. But
Yes.
but you have been Minister of Education, Youth, Sports and Culture. When you manage those ministries and departments, what stand out for you as major achievements, in as much as you just had a very short tenure?
It was a short tenure, but it was a very intense tenure. And I say that because when I was elected in 2020, I was elected in the middle of a lockdown. We were literally in lockdown as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. And so much of the 2 years that I spent in office was very COVID-centered and affected by COVID. And I had the task of running the largest ministry in the government, which is the Ministry of Education, and being responsible ultimately for our education system, schools, protocols within the schools at the most critical time of the pandemic. And so I think for me, as in my capacity as Minister of Education, that would be my biggest achievement, leading that team, which is a fantastic team. Let me tell you, we have an amazing set of persons who are running the Ministry of Education at the moment, and that is why we are considered to have the best education system in the Caribbean right now. So during lockdown, St. Kitts and Nevis, during the 2 years of COVID, St. Kitts and Nevis was the only country in the Caribbean, English-speaking Caribbean, in 2020 to 2021 and then 2021 into 2022 that was able to have full-time face-to-face instruction for the full academic years. So when we were back in school in September of 2021, students had been in Trinidad, for example, Barbados had not started school. I think to date there's still some students who still have not gone to school for 2 years. When we had to lock down in, I think it was May or June of 2021, we had already completed the academic syllabus. We are literally in revision for exams. And so we were the only country in English-speaking Caribbean that actually had a full year of school. That says a lot. That says a lot about our ability to not just manage COVID, but to manage an education system which really encompasses some of the most vulnerable persons in our society, which are kids. The larger ones in high school, you could teach them how to social distance and how to sanitize and all those things. But how do you deal with the early childhood sector, for example? With 2 and 3 years, it's virtually impossible. And so I think to the training that we did with teachers, with the protocols that were in place, we were able to successfully do it. So much so, because we were ahead of the game, we developed a document, a policy document, which outlined the protocols that would be in place. From screening protocols to what happens if there's an outbreak, what happens if somebody feels sick, what are those protocols, what procedures do you take, what activities, for example, sports and other activities, could we have and couldn't we have during COVID until things had gotten better. And that document and outlining all of the necessary dates, start dates, closing dates, exam dates for the upcoming year. I shared that document with my regional colleagues. We have these CARICOM and OECS group chats on WhatsApp and different things. And many of them, they were all very happy because nobody has had anything even close to that. And through sharing that document that we developed here, many of the other islands adopted it. In some instances, they'll tell you, we just changed St. Kitts and Nevis to whatever the name of the country was. And they were able to shape their policies based on that, hence me being recognized in a CARICOM forum for leadership during the pandemic and the successes that St. Kitts and Nevis was able to achieve, well above what our regional colleagues did. So that would be my biggest success in the 2 years as Minister of Education.
And no small feat, if I might add, because like you said, I can imagine managing thousands of young people, on the strain of a pandemic and still being able to complete, like you said, syllabus. That is truly, truly commendable. Right. You also spoke about housing in your opening salvo. And I know that your constituency has spread out past Bastille into maybe some parts of St. Peter's. Well, I guess on the fringes of St. Peter's, Pine Garden and the Shadwell and the like. So surely housing must be a challenge for you. But you kind of intimated that, in fact, it is a challenge when you said that, there's some questionable things that distribution of homes. But is there any plan at all to offer some private sector company an opportunity to build homes, build apartments, to take that strain off government, and especially where your constituency is concerned, such a large constituency that is so spread out?
Absolutely. I don't believe in government having to do everything. I believe that housing is a perfect opportunity where we can involve the private sector to build not just low-income but even middle-income housing projects, because the reality is we do have a middle-income, middle class, as they call it, which is a very old term. But I'm talking about young professionals, entrepreneurs who don't qualify as low-income, but do need bank assistance for mortgage. They're not necessarily rich, and so this is a perfect opportunity where private sector companies can come in, can be developed. Some young people can come together and create a company to do this. And certainly, because of the limitation on lands, like I said, we are likely to have to do housing complexes. And so there are areas in Central Bastille which have been identified as appropriate for whether it be low-income or middle-income housing projects that private companies can come into. A group, a young architect, a young contractor, a young engineer could come together and form an entity and build out something like that using the with some assistance from the government, and do just that. And
that is something you would encourage?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I've always expressed the fact that I don't believe NHC should be responsible for granting mortgages and all of that. I believe we need to create financing, whether it is through a particular fund or really through, say, the National Bank or Development Bank, and NHC simply be a project manager, thereby allowing more private sector involvement and the opportunity for more persons to really get work and to take some of that financial strain, particularly off of the NHC.
Fantastic. I hope that challenge, in a sense, has reached the correct ears, so that even as you would have shared that, people are now looking at possible opportunities, because I do believe that there are a lot of opportunities here for our people. Sometimes I think that instead of perhaps complaining, we could maybe zero in on stuff that we could, services and all of that we could provide, and challenge governments that we are just as resourceful and we can provide these services. But as you say, our young people are really capable, and I would hope that someday soon some group of them step up to the plate and do just that.
Right. I mean, government might not be able to provide financing, but duty-free concessions and other concessions which would encourage and allow them to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to go back a little bit to some of your ministries, and I'm recalling some of the things that I heard while you were in charge of those ministries. I think you recently took a group of students to Dubai. I don't know what was the objective of that. Right. So perhaps you could tell us what was the outcome. What did it stir in our young people to be able to go in a first world country and see the development there? What did it spur them to do, having returned to St. Kitts?
Well, I was in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, in November, negotiating the Under-19 Cricket World Cup, which I was successful in getting for St. Kitts, which we had in January. While there, I took the opportunity to visit the St. Kitts Nevis Pavilion at the World Fair, the Dubai Expo
2020.
Expo 2020. And it just completely blew my mind away. I thought that the Expo was in some big convention hall. I've been to conventions all over the world, and I thought we just had like a little kiosk. I did not appreciate that the UAE had actually built a brand new city costing billions of dollars in the middle of the desert. And it was a city, and just in the few hours I was there, I was just completely blown away. And I thought, why can't young people in St. Kitts and Nevis get the opportunity to see something like this? The kind of technology, the contributions from countries, whether it was through food, through music, through architecture from all over the world. I just saw it as a perfect opportunity for a group of young people from St. Kitts and Nevis to see the world in a couple of days. And, I immediately came back and started working on it. I got the team from the Department of Youth to come on board, and people like Shanicia Puran was instrumental in really, which is one of our youth officers, who was able to really come on board and assist me in getting this whole thing put together. And we looked at a few themes that were being highlighted at the Expo. We eventually chose one to do with how do we sustainably grow food for future use and food security. That was a theme. We had an essay competition which we launched in the 1st of December, and out of that we had 15 successful students. Lindsey Grant, in his capacity as parliamentary representative for constituency 4, loved the idea, and he sponsored 4 additional students from the Virchilds High School to accompany us. So it was actually 19 students in total. We had a few parents that joined us as well, and that really was how we got the group together. We had a panel. We had, I think it was something like 60 applicants. We had a panel of judges. One was is an English teacher, Jennifer Williams. One was Val Henry, who is a communications expert, and Melvin James, who's an agricultural expert, bearing in mind, and a former teacher, so bearing in mind the theme of food security. And, they did it anonymously. There were no names on the essays, and we chose them, and we went off. And I think there was at least one young person who had never even flown, had never left the country before.
Wow.
And his first time was to go to Dubai. And so we had some issues with flights, and, travel nowadays is crazy. And so we ended up having to take some unscheduled stops, but it meant that we went through Italy, we went through the Netherlands, through Amsterdam, through London, to the US. And so even that experience of travel was amazing. I always give the joke, we were going through the airport in Amsterdam, and one young man had never had McDonald's before. And all I heard was, wait. I thought something was wrong. And he saw those golden arches and he was like, guys, I got to go in here. Like, I've been waiting my whole life for this.
Oh,
you know, that was the kind of experience you wanted to evoke. And then once we got to the expo in Dubai, I mean, just driving from the airport in to see the buildings and the architecture and the lights and it was just like, wow.
Yeah.
And that was the, that was the sort
That
of
exposure is always good for
experience.
young people.
Absolutely. Going up into the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world, to the top. Going to Abu Dhabi and visiting the mosque there. All just, a spiritual experience. So it wasn't just about having fun.
Yeah.
I was able to convince some of them to eat some camel meat burgers. So that was the experience. They loved it, going to different pavilions which highlighted women's rights and youth rights and different countries, and they had the little passports and they were able to get them stamped in every country pavilion that they went to see the St. Kitts pavilion and for them to see all of these people coming into the St. Kitts pavilion and being blown away by it and to appreciate that we actually live in paradise.
Yeah.
That other persons have such a great appreciation for our country and we may take for granted sometimes.
So are there any plans to follow, to track these students, to see if in fact it was not just, just a plane ride, just a jaunt outside of St. Kitts and Nevis, but to ensure that of the 19, maybe even 2 of them, in fact, take up the challenge of this whole theme of agriculture and doing agriculture in a modern way. I hope that there is. I hope that somebody is going to follow the group and see where this whole experience would have taken them.
Yeah, definitely there is. And just to say, we actually had students from Nevis on this team, so it was truly a federal initiative, and so yes, we are still in contact with them. I think they still have the little group chat and stuff. And while I was there, I was actually able to sign an MOU with my counterpart from the UAE government in terms of scholarships. I think it was 4 scholarships to the Sheikh Zayed University in Abu Dhabi. So, even opportunities for them to go back and actually further some tertiary level education there.
Excellent. We're going to take a break now. There's so much exciting information. We believe that you deserve a little break to kind of assimilate. So we're going to take a break now, and when we come back, we will be chatting some more with Jonell Powell. He's the candidate of the People's Action Movement in Central Bastia constituency number 2. And to remind you that your questions and concerns and comments are included at around about 11:15. So get them ready. We'll share the numbers closer to the time, and we would include your thoughts, your questions, and your comments in another, say, 25 minutes. But we'll come right back. This is The Movement on Win FM.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely those of the participant or caller and do not reflect the views of WinFM 98.9. WinFM reserves the right to disconnect any caller who infringes the law or offends the right of any person. The station will also refuse to take any call from any person who, in WinFM's considered opinion, is likely to expose the station to liability for statements made on the air.
Welcome back. You are listening to The Movement, a program that has been organized by the People's Action Movement to bring to your attention its candidates. We are now on candidate number 4, Jonell Powell, the representative for his party for Central Bastia, or constituency number 2 as we commonly know it. Now, Jonell, you have quite a huge number of Spanish-speaking constituents, and I guess their needs are probably not dissimilar to the needs of locals. How are you planning to incorporate their their needs. I guess you talk to them on a daily basis. You're now canvassing, so you're probably hearing from them. And by the way, can you speak Spanish? ¿Habla español?
Poquito.
So, as Minister of Education, too, was there even any plans to try to teach conversational Spanish at the primary school level? Because I think we need to do that now.
Not necessarily at that level, but one of the things that I was in the process of putting together was providing more support for Spanish-speaking students in terms of the ability to integrate better into a predominantly English-speaking system. My sister is a teacher at WashU, for example, and she gave a perfect example to me some time back of a Spanish-speaking student who she said is clearly just really intelligent, but the language barrier was really holding her back, even at the high school level. And so if we can put things in place, and what it basically was additional support in terms of teaching support, and that was in my capacity as Minister of Education, further support for these students there, as well as being able to give Spanish support to some of the teachers so that to help them
to relate. Yeah.
But in my capacity as parliamentary representative and even just a private citizen, what I am in the process of doing as well is creating after-school initiatives for students, including Spanish-speaking students, to provide even more support for them, so that they can integrate. But generally, in relation to that community, which is predominantly persons from the Dominican Republic, you have many of them who are actually citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis, and as a citizen, they're entitled to all the rights and privileges as any of the other ones of us. And so there is a need for them to have equal access to housing, to social programs, to jobs, to opportunities. I must say that they're quite industrious people, and it is really how do we integrate them more into our mainstream society. There's still a lot of stigma, about Spanish and English speaking and that sort of thing. It can be easy for them as a community to be here in this predominantly English country. I hope that we can, as a society, educate ourselves better in terms of being more welcoming to persons from other countries who come here, who choose to come here to live. Many of us, including myself, either have family members who have migrated to, it could be the Virgin Islands, US, Canada, England. I myself had migrated to Anguilla, where I practiced law for a couple of years. We've all been there. It's about opportunity.
Yes.
And so the same way we want access to programs and what it could be healthcare in the States. How many of us go to the States to have children and get free healthcare, So it should be reciprocated. So for those citizens and residents, more access to programs, social programs, and other opportunities in general. And then for those who may not be residents, we need to have a more systematic way of dealing with immigration issues for them, whether it is residency and work permits, visas for family members coming in and all of that. We do have to bear in mind that we're a small country and we can only accept X amount of visitors at any given time.
Yeah.
And we know people do try to come and stay longer than they ought to, but there's a better way of dealing with it. Unfortunately, the Ministry of National Security over the last 2 years, and I don't believe that COVID is a fulsome justification for the actions, but the Ministry of National Security has really, through its leadership over the last 2 years, completely shut down our immigration system, particularly in relation to immigrants, particularly the Spanish-speaking ones. They will tell you that things like visa applications, citizenship certificates or applications, work permit applications have all just been stalled for 2 years for no good reason. And so I believe. Now, look, we do know that there is a practice of persons getting married to get citizenship, which is illegal. But our current laws provide for national security to do the necessary investigations and to pick out the ones that are illegitimate. So it's about managing it properly, and I believe that there's a need to have a Spanish-speaking person, preferably somebody from the Dominican community working in national security who is able to communicate better with them to ensure that they understand even things like helping them to fill out forms. That is a predominant grouping of persons here.
Or perhaps have the forms translated, so there's a Spanish version and an English version.
So you can have, exactly, that's actually a good idea as well, to have forms like that. And not just there, but even government forms.
Yes. Yeah.
To have Spanish versions of the different forms so that we can accommodate them and make life simpler for all of us.
Right. That's fair enough. And then there is CPL. CPL came at a time when we were still very much fearful about COVID and nobody knew what was going to happen and when it was going to happen. And that is something that you also managed admirably. Perhaps you could tell our listeners how that went.
Well, last year, CPL, for the second year at that point in time, made the decision to host the entire tournament in one country. Normally, as we know, they split it up. And I was successful in negotiating for the entire CPL 33 matches for 2021 to be hosted here in St. Kitts and Nevis, which it was done quite successfully. The games were only open up to vaccinated patrons because that was the local protocol at the time. But we had something like about 300 persons come in the CPL cohort who basically lived here for 6 weeks, which meant that the Marriott Hotel, which was the base hotel, had to bring back rehire persons at a point when they had laid them off because they were no tourists. Well, CPL brought tourists, and tourists were here for 6 weeks. So the benefits coming out of CPL were so many people were hired, whether it was taxi drivers shuttling from airports to hotels and to the different venues back and forth, bars and restaurants. Although they were in a bubble, they were able to take teams to different restaurants and create that bubble in different restaurants. Different restaurants were able to benefit that way. Caterers for 33 matches, you're talking about, I think it was something like two or three meals a day for the duration of the tournament. So there were so many caterers who were able to get work. Groundsmen, we had to bring on additional groundsmen for the number of matches that we had and actually do training. There was one person in particular who CPL had sent. He was here for about 3 months, who was able to actually do training with our local groundsmen so that we could improve our skill sets here. Persons who were providing transportation of equipment. It just goes on and on. Security, cleaning services, and that resulted in a $25 million direct investment into St. Kitts and Nevis at a time when we at our lowest. There were no tourists here. Persons had been laid off. $25 million was injected into this. EC dollars were injected in this economy during that 6-week period. And so we saw it. There was a clear boost in our economy. People were making money again, even if only for a short time. Right. And the exposure that St. Kitts and Nevis got was tremendous, especially because we hosted the entire tournament. It was tremendous. I think we got something like $800 million worth of coverage internationally as a sporting venue.
That probably the Ministry of Tourism wouldn't be able to afford to pay for.
Not at all. And what it did is it set us up, which a lot of people don't understand. It set us up for a lot more things to come. So if I'm allowed, eventually, as I said earlier, I had gone to Abu Dhabi in November to negotiate the Under-19 Cricket World Cup, which we did get. We had a number of matches here in January. There would have been a significant injection of investment into the economy we've not gotten. I don't think they've done the economic assessment yet, so we don't know those numbers. But I think it's not going to be far off from what we got in CPL. So we had under 19 World Cup. We had World Cup matches in St. Paul's, in Connery. You know, we developed a second broadcast venue in the Connery cricket facility here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Again, similar catering opportunities, transportation opportunities, cleaning opportunities. It wasn't just Warner Park. You had 4 or 5 different venues being used around the island. That, together with the re-establishment of the Len Harris Cricket Academy in Warner Park, which had been dormant for about 15 years, I was able to resurrect that academy. It now has a fully functional board. We have a management team and a coaching team in place there. And so what all of this, I say all of this to say all of these cricket achievements that we saw, particularly over the last 12 to 18 months, meant that we ticked every single checkbox in terms as it relates to cricket development on the Cricket West Indies. Before, when you heard about West Indies coming to St. Kitts on the island, they used to have to bid and you had to pay money for it. They don't do that anymore. They allocate these matches based on a checklist that they give to you in terms of, support that you provided for cricket. And because of 33 matches of CPL, World Cup, the functional Len Harris Cricket Academy, which caters to, I forget how many kids, I think about 30 or 40 kids now, we were allocated two T20 matches in August, West Indies versus India. We got those matches over Guyana, who traditionally gets those matches because of even sort of that Indian link. Trinidad is only getting 1 of the 3 matches because they're using it to make the Brian Lara Stadium fully accredited internationally, and so that is going to be the first match. St. Kitts is getting those matches over those countries because of that, and because of the good work that has been done within sports. And what that means is that we are in pole position now for the World Cup, which will be held in West Indies, I think, in 2024.
Is that so? Really?
So when you hear people, I hear people talking about cricket and cricket can't eat, which was a comment that had been made one day in a meeting, and when I was trying to pitch for World Cup, for the CPL, there was a plan. It was not just about, it's sports.
But with the money you just spoke about, cricket can eat. Cricket provided food on the table.
Food for hundreds of persons in St. Kitts and Nevis. So we are in pole position to be a host venue for the Cricket World Cup in 2024, which will be hosted by the West Indies. I was also able to negotiate CPL for this year. So I signed that contract back in April. There was a big press release that CPL put out, and I would have put out one as well. So we are actually having 31 CPL matches in St. Kitts this year. 9 of those matches will be the T20 format, which we're accustomed to. The other matches are going to be, will represent their first edition of a T10 tournament. And the entire T10 tournament, which will feature all of the same teams from the T20, will be held in St. Kitts and Nevis. They're also having the inaugural women's tournament as well, which is going to be held in its entirety here in St. Kitts and Nevis. I say St. Kitts and Nevis because part of the negotiations was to ensure that we have a number of practice matches in Nevis to get the Nevision community involved in it. They don't necessarily have a broadcast venue, which is required, but at least we can have some of the practice matches, get players over there doing, schools will be closed, but, visiting the academies over there, having matches, interacting with kids, with locals. I know CPL wants to do a little, they want to do some giveaways and different things in Nevis as well to make them feel a part of it. So there's so much that has been done with cricket and sport in general in 2 short years.
Great work. Congratulations. I had no idea that for one, that there were so many matches, and 2, that in that we have future opportunities to host Cricket
Absolutely.
World Cup. That is fantastic news.
And if you're able to invest or inject 25 million last year, when only a limited number of persons could attend and participate, imagine the kind of
Yeah.
investment that will come, or injection of monies that will come from CPL this year. When
Absolutely.
persons are able to go to the park in
Yeah.
the full numbers, and the clothes that they're gonna buy to go to cricket, and the hairstyles and the drinks and
You're talking about the
everything
women?
else. Well, them too. It's gonna be tremendous.
Fantastic work. As I said, I was following it, but not that closely to realize this level of impact, which is really very significant. Congratulations are
Thank
really
you.
due. So we are getting close to the opening up the interaction from our listeners and viewers. But as the youngest candidate in your party, I wanted to ask you, how relatable are you to young people, and how are young people relatable to you?
Well, I'm one of them. I think I'm still considered a young person.
Which is why this question was appropriate.
I think I'm able to relate to them just by being able to participate in their conversation, music, opportunities that they're looking for. I mean, it's amazing to just be able to sit down and talk to young people. Not to speak to them, but to speak with them. It was something that I did. I started a youth forum series. So I actually did the first one, and just to be able to just walk on the floor and throw questions to them and talk to them and get their perspectives on different issues, whether it was job opportunities or educational opportunities. Many of them have become very entrepreneurial, particularly over the last 2 years under COVID, and to hear where they want to see St. Kitts and Nevis going. Their perspectives are very far from what we know traditionally, whether it be political or otherwise. They think very differently. And I think I've been fortunate to be able to sit down, roll up your sleeves and just chat with them on their level, reason with them, as they say. And so that was why I had started that series, which was meant to be a quarterly series. So every quarter we would have a youth forum on different issues. We had actually started advertising the next one when I left the government, which was focused on youth entrepreneurship. And so I'm still going to do that. So I'm in the process of organizing an entrepreneurship fair, which I'm hoping to be able to do at Greenlands Park. We're going to be inviting entrepreneurs, particularly young ones, but older persons can come, but to come and display and show off their small businesses, their little skill sets. Who's making jewelry, making soaps and that sort of thing, and making accessories, for example, and to have a forum with the young entrepreneurs in particular, because we need to give them the support. This is why government of PAM and CCM has said that we are going to put $100 million into an entrepreneurship fund from which persons can who have small or medium-sized businesses or who want to start a business can go and access grant funding, loan funding, but I think even more importantly, training, whether it be training how to run your business, whether it's training in marketing, how do you market your business, bookkeeping, managing, so that you're in a position to make sure that business is more sustainable going forward. One part of that initiative will be that we are going to offer duty-free concessions on your initial equipment and plant, whatever it is, your tools and initial equipment, and your first stock will be duty-free. That gives you a jump start, going forward. We understand the government has to make money, so it can't be duty-free all the time, but at least we can give you a start.
Yeah.
And I think the most important thing is not just about giving young people some money and say, here. I've seen in past schemes where you gave somebody $100,000 for a business out to the SIDF, and the first thing they did was buy a car. So
Crazy.
we want to teach young people and empower them. It's not about, PAM is not about giving a fish, it's about teaching people how to fish.
Absolutely. That was very powerfully said. But not only that, but you also heard of instances where, 20 people got a loan to buy a bus. So you're creating more competition in one little
Exactly.
industry.
Exactly.
For cake making, because I myself did some inquiry. I actually wanted to utilize my marketing platform to kind of help some of these people, and of course, it didn't go anywhere in any place, because sometimes people don't, I guess, share your vision, and or maybe sometimes you're too far ahead, and people are not really ready to catch up to that vision. But I would hope that when the party rolls out that plan, that it actually there's some survey, some assessment, so that you don't have a whole heap of people in one area when there's another area that has
Right.
nobody.
So, for example, over the last 2 years, there have been a number of, through Development Bank, we've been able to approve a number of persons have gotten loans. How many new rental car companies have started? It's like every other street has a rental car
Yes.
company, everybody has cars to rent. But how many people have thought about short trip taxis? It's something that I've been trying to promote. I've spoken to a number of these young rental car owners, saying, look, they no longer can a bus go from the west terminal to the east terminal. So if I live in Keyon, but I work in town, I go and I buy groceries at Rams on the Bay Road, I have to walk all the way up to from down there up to the east bus terminal.
Yeah.
But if there's a short trip taxi service, they call them gypsy taxis in
Trinidad.
Trinidad,
Yeah.
for example, that can do that short trip. Maybe I live up in Lime Keel, which is off the bus route. That's a short trip taxi service. So it doesn't directly compete with traditional taxis who do more longer trips.
Right.
But there's short trips around town that they could benefit from.
I love it. Good idea. I hope in time somebody would take up this idea.
I hope so too.
And you wouldn't charge them, right, for the idea?
Not at all.
No
not
fees.
at all. Maybe a little free lift when the sun is hot. But
Folks, we are chatting today with John L. Powell. He is the custodian, if you will, of constituency number 2. And of course, there's an election that is coming, a federal election in St. Kitts and Nevis. And so he has come to sell himself and sell his ideas and the ideas of his People's Action Movement Party to you using this platform. But as we said before, and we are people of our word, we are including your concerns, your questions, your comments, and so you can do so on the following numbers. If you're overseas, the numbers are 718-285-6984 or 305-921-4619. Locally, the numbers are 466-762 or 662-0989. We welcome your call anytime now. There's a call? No? We welcome your call anytime now so that you could engage, Mr. Powell some more, or perhaps even challenge him or give him some suggestion or some concern that you have. You may not necessarily be part of his constituency, but perhaps looking from the outside in, or maybe some general idea that you can share with his party or some critique, because all we ask for you to do is to just be respectful when you make that call. We don't have a call yet? Okay, so we're going to carry on the conversation some more. And you spoke early on about the futsal in Pine Gardens. And I remember when you had the initial groundbreaking, it was for many people an unknown sport. And I don't know how much people would be interested, how much people know how it's displayed, and if in fact there was demand, because those are some of the questions that were being asked. Right. What is that? People really interested in that? So I don't know if that is something that you want to share now, considering that you just said you're going to, go back to building it out fully, hopefully when you get back into office.
Well, futsal is basically it's a short form, it's a variation of traditional football. The fields are smaller, the teams are smaller. That's essentially what it is. It's on a smaller scale, and there is, as I am advised, there's only one other futsal facility in the Caribbean, which is in Trinidad. And so that came out of the fact that that particular constituency is.
Okay, Mr.
We have a call.
Yeah,
So
just hold your thoughts along. Good morning and welcome to the movement.
Hello, good morning. I've heard of the CPL win. Sometime I wasn't able to witness it, but I've heard people say here and there. I would like the minister to describe what it was like that day to have the CPL win for St. Kitts and Nevis. That was tremendous. So I listen.
Okay. Thank you for your call. Do we have another caller, Trent? We have another caller, so we'll take this call. Good morning and welcome to the movement. I think that caller is gone. There's another one. Good morning, welcome to the movement.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Keynes and Mr. Powell.
Good morning.
Thanks for providing this program so far. I think the discussion has been good. And thank you, Ms. Keynes, for facilitating the movement over the past few weeks. I think you're doing an excellent job, actually. So
Thank you.
continue to do so. I have a few questions. The first question is revolving around the prison that was, earlier spoken about by the Honorable Powell. So I think we've all seen the viral video about the prison in Estridge being built for a reported $2.4 billion. I think concerning is one of the more milder words that an individual could probably use to describe this entire project with respect to the amount that is being valued at. So my question is, what was the involvement exactly of the People's Action Movement on this new prison being built, and what input they had on how it's being financed? That's the first question. Secondly, this is with respect to the fair share topic that has been discussed ad nauseum all around the land. So since 2015, I think, or even before that, the issue of fair share has been, spoken about. And in 2015, with the formation of the Team Unity Administration, the People's Action Movement was a major player in Team Unity. Despite this, I don't think I've heard much from the People's Action Movement publicly, that being since 2015, with respect to the fair share, prior to, I would say, the last few months. I could understand why this concerned citizen movement with the minority of seats in 2015 and 2020 would have less, let's call it, bench strength, so to speak, in which to do so. But not necessarily the same for the People's Action Movement. So I was wondering what was the communication block or the downfall or the shortcomings there with respect to the fair share cry from since 2015. And lastly, the Honorable Matt Brantley has said a lot of times publicly that since 2008, Nevis has been, deprived, in his words, of about $1 billion worth of the fair share. So is it the view of the People's Action Movement that the people of Nevis should be given some sort of, I don't know what to call it, back pay arrangement? Maybe that's naive, but I'm just wondering. And going forward, what is the intended policy position of the People's Action Movement to ensure that this issue is handled soundly and in a financially prudent way? Thank you very much.
Thank you too. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
There's no more caller now, so we're gonna allow Jonel to delve in. Just the caller wanted to know what was, I guess, your personal feeling like on the win for the St. Kitts team.
And how could I forget it when I spoke about CPL?
I know, right?
There's so many things we're focusing on. Yes, St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots won their first ever CPL title. And as life would have it, here in St. Kitts when we hosted the entire tournament. And I think what made it even more dramatic, it came down to literally the last ball of the tournament. it was, I don't know what it was more than carnival for sure. I think it was emotional, it was fun, it was exciting, it was amazing. We were all in the park, and it comes on to the last ball, and everybody was nervous and just hanging, on the edge of their seats, and it was just an unbelievable experience.
Tantamount scenario.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And, I think the most significant aspect of it was, I think for the first time during the COVID pandemic, we as a people were able to forget about COVID for 5 minutes and had something to celebrate as a people. Forget the politics, forget the parties, the personalities. It wasn't about Pam and Labour, it was about Kittitians and Divisions celebrating a victory in a difficult time. And I think that good feeling was needed, and that is what it provided.
Wonderful. And then the second caller who tabled 3 questions.
Correct.
I don't know if you captured them. I'm going to remind
I did.
you. Okay,
I did.
go right ahead.
In relation to the prisoner, what role did Pam play? And I think this is a particular project that deserves a lot more discussion in different forums so that people understand what is happening with it. Long story short, the concept through which it is being built is, for example, not different to when, for example, the Park Hyatt was built, where a developer comes in, is approved to build a particular project. In the case of Park Hyatt, it was a hotel. They were allocated based on the construction designs and the costs. They were allocated X number of shares or citizenships which they could make available.
Would you like to pause, or you want to just develop the point?
We could take the call and then I finish.
So let's just fit in this call quickly. Good morning, call, and welcome to the movement.
Good morning to you, and good morning, Janelle.
Good morning.
With all due respect, and I understand why you may want to avoid it, but it is important for the citizens and the voters in Central Bastia in particular to understand your part in why they have to be going back to the polls 2 years after an election. You, like your colleagues, were telling us everything was okay and that Prime Minister was the best thing since sliced bread, to use a well-known expression, when you very well knew back then that this was clearly not the case. Because, and we've been hearing since before the incident, that there were rumblings that you guys were dissatisfied with this leadership and character. But you did nothing but cover up. To put it bluntly, you lied to us. And I remember the last election, you were adamant that you did nothing wrong in the Tanzil misappropriation case. Yet I also remember you having an interview where you said you seemed contrite and said you regret it because it was a blot on your record after the appeal failed. Yet you said you did nothing wrong. You maintain you did nothing wrong. Well, which is it? Don't you owe your constituents an explanation? Why should they re-elect you as the representative? In my opinion, you should not even be a candidate. And secondly and finally, the difficulty I have with many candidates, not just you, but many candidates, is that they only look at the next election. They are not visionary enough. The Central Bastia needs a complete redevelopment plan spanning some 20 years. And this should come in consultation with stakeholders and planners and engineers and so on, okay, so that you can have something as impressive as Palm Island in the UAE, right? And by the way, I don't know why you started out with the field trip going to there instead of a place like Africa. I think the youth are already impressed by Western trappings like McDonald's and need some more grounding. Good idea, but I think the exposure for the kids were a bit misdirected. Okay then.
Thank you for your input, caller. So we're gonna let Jonel wheel back to the question about the prison.
So I was simply saying the prison is being built in terms of financing is similar to what we did with the Park Hyatt. A developer comes in, presents a project, and they are allocated X number of shares or which represent citizenships which they can make available to the investors. And so the only difference is that with this particular project, when it is completed, it will be turned over to the government to manage and to operate as a prison. That is the only difference between that and say Park Hyatt. Park Hyatt, the developers brought in the Hyatt group to manage it. In this one, the property, the prison is going to be turned over to the government to manage and operate, which means that the government did not have to find the money to build the prison. Where the controversy comes in now is having made that agreement, having approved that project, and PAM, the member, myself and the other PAM ministers were part of the approval process for that project while we were in government. The problem is, or the controversy is, what happened thereafter, after it was approved. And it is a private project. It is being done by a private company, as with the Park Hyatt, and so there's no need, it doesn't go through any government process in terms of having to put out tenders for different contracts and all of that. And we're now seeing, for example, the land had to be cleared, and the company that is used the heavy equipment company used to clear all the lands and do the initial work for the prison is the Prime Minister's brother, Harris again. The security company that is providing services over there, Prime Minister's brother, Harris again. When you look at the service provider that is being used to process the citizenship applications, a company which his brother and family own, Harris again. These are perfect examples of how that family has been able to directly benefit from a project of this nature because of the fact that the Prime Minister, Timothy Harris is the Prime Minister. How come other persons have not been able to benefit from such a project of this magnitude? When you think about how much it costs, it is a significant project to build out. And we believe that
I think that was the emphasis too of the caller.
Exactly.
2.4
and so
billion.
You're talking about the project doesn't cost 2.4 billion. The shares that have been allocated can amount to that if they were able to sell all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is you're talking about a major multi-million-dollar project which seems to have been manipulated after the fact to accommodate one man and his family. So those are the concerns that we have with a project of that nature. In the second issue, a question raised by that caller had to do with fair share issue in St. Kitts and PAM. He understood the argument being made by the CCM in Nevis in terms of access or equitable access to CBI proceeds. What was the issue in terms of fair share by the PAM party and candidates in government? The fact that for the last 2 years, there were major social programs being run by the government which were being withheld from the majority of persons in this country. Not from John L. Powell or Sean Richards. We were not applying to be on STEP or access to PAP. But for 2 years, for example, those two programs in particular, the STEP and the PAP, which both fall under the office of the Prime Minister, we were told as cabinet members, the public was told, so they're public statements by the Prime Minister, that these two programs were essentially closed off, that they were being, in the case of STEP, it was being audited because we were looking to make STEP workers in the government sector permanent workers in terms of auxiliary workers. And in respect of PAP, that they were doing an audit because there were all these people who were on it who shouldn't be on it. And for 2 years, whenever you go and you seek assistance, there's a household with a person in the Market Street area, an elderly lady. She's an amputee, and she has additional costs now because of her condition. It's just her and her son who is working for a little more than minimum wage. They clearly are qualified, and when you try to assist them in having the application for the PAP approved, you're told, well, they have to wait because this program is closed. But at the same time, persons from constituency 7 or persons related to the minister, the line minister, which is the prime minister, were being admitted to these programs. And so it goes into, I think, a question which came up from Mr. Matt Mahon a little after. So if I may just skip, what was my role in the downfall of the government? Well, it was because of these issues in terms of fair share. The fact that there was not equal access to the PAP, to the step by the people in Central Bastia, for example. Access to lands, another department which falls under the auspices of the Prime Minister. How many people in this country, in all the other constituencies, have been applying for land and can't get a piece of land? But the Prime Minister is handpicking who should get from who mustn't get. That is the fair share that was not being distributed amongst all the persons. And I think the perfect example is those 15 houses that we got from Venezuela. 15 free houses, and every single one went in the constituency number 7 in Mansion. What about the people in Market Street? What about the people in Challengers who have been waiting for a housing project for some 7 years now? You know, that is the fair share that we're talking about that never happened. And so we were not prepared, the 6 of us were not prepared to stay in a government any longer under those conditions. We did all we can in terms of engaging the Prime Minister, raising the issues. I myself went and met with him personally and said, Tim, look, we need to talk. These are the issues, man. We need to do better. For months, we were trying to deal with these issues, and when we realized that he was not prepared to do better, we had no choice. Sean Richards and Matt Brantley, down to the very end, made themselves available to discuss and negotiate and to make things better. And all he did was avoid and run from the facts. So I think that answers both questions.
Yeah.
Going back a bit in terms of back pay and the policy going forward in relation to Nevis, I am not in a position to speak to back pay. Obviously, if the kind of funds that we think are or should be in the government coffers are there, and I know that there are certain issues that Nevis face, the people of Nevis and the NIA face at the moment. I know there's a debt issue, for example, that they probably need additional support on. We can look at making more funding available to them. I'm not in a position to sit here and say, yes, we're going to give them back pay, because it's not that simple. But certainly going forward, there must be that equitable share. I think it's Section 113 in the Constitution which speaks to that. And we are in agreement that, and we being PAM, we are in agreement that the NIA, whoever the NIA is, so it's not Matt Brantley who's getting this, whoever the NIA is, should be entitled to approximately 25% of the CBI revenue that comes in. We cannot deny the fact that these are the passports of citizenship of St. Kitts and Nevis. Many of the projects which participate in that CBI program are on Nevis. The Hamilton and the Four Seasons and all of these are different projects on Nevis who contribute. And so they should get the equitable share. I think the last thing, well, I answered the first question from Mr. Matt Mahon about my role in why we are facing an election again in 2 years. And then he referred to a legal matter which I was involved in before. And it's a matter that has been resolved for some time now, so I don't need to dive into it. I really didn't expect any more from him. What I will say on that is what I said then, and I said, no, I did nothing wrong. I've never been arrested for anything. I've never been charged for anything. I've never been convicted of anything. There was an issue where a former client of mine had issues, and he utilized his right to involve the court. I was never ordered to pay any monies. I was never in a position where I had to repay any monies because of this. And as a matter of fact, Lindsey Grant and I ended up having to be, we were the ones who ended up having to be repaid. And that is something that Mr. Matt Mahon and them need to really, when you're going to speak about a court judgment, speak about it in its entirety and don't pick and choose what you want to pick, you know. But that is behind me. That is not an issue for me. And so...
and ultimately the constituents decide.
They decided once already and they can decide again, you know. So it's not even an issue. But, you know, I think that represents that. And we spoke about young people and their attitudes nowadays. That kind of thinking and that sort of, that represents the old style of politics. That's an issue that doesn't go on. When we bring it up again, young people want to know, the people of Central Basque want to know, what am I going to do for them now? And as we've been discussing, I think this is what separates me from my competitors. I actually have a plan. I have a plan that I can come here with you, Laverne, and discuss and give details on and explain exactly how I'm going to do it. It's not just about we're going to make everything better for everybody. We're going to make life better for you. How are you going to do it? And I'm explaining now exactly how I'm going to do it. I think he said that my programs are not long-term. What could not be long-term about a complete redevelopment of the Irish Town Bay Road, land reclamation and major infrastructural improvements? Those are not just 20-year projects. Those are 50 to 100-year projects.
True. We have another call. We want to say good morning and welcome to the movement.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. I've not been able to interact with you for a long time on the radio. Not at all.
Since I'm not in the begging list, I listen to the issues, you understand? And I try to analyze. Because people loyalty are so fickle. I stay far from politicians. I pray for them that the Lord will change their heart. Now, back to the Irish School. Now, I taught down there years ago, from 73 to 78. And I was, strangely enough, I was talking to Carmen Christopher, my friend, the Wednesday before she died. And, you know, jokingly, I said, look, I think it's time enough now that we name the school. All the other schools in Bastia have been renamed, except the Irish Town School. And, you know, Irish Town, in some people's mind, carry a certain connotation, which I think should have been changed. I mean, you have Miss Smith, who taught us in nearly 40 years down there. Carmen taught over 25. I mean, you have Rosabelle Warner, who transformed the school. And have you ever given thought to it? Has the matter ever come up?
Yes. Okay. Go ahead.
Number two. Now I hear everybody taking credit for doing everything. To whom should you attribute the work done by Mr. Eugene Hamilton? Or whatever he did as a PAM. Shouldn't the credit be given to PAM? Patrice Liebert as the Minister for Infrastructure from 2015 to 2020 was a PAM candidate. Because the claim is that you were lazy. Everybody, they were lazy. They didn't perform. And I've always said, the weakness in PAM is that they don't say what they would have done. Everybody say what they do. The other day, I heard, I think it was last night, on Dupont show, Gomes. You know, he did a pretty good job.
I think that was this morning.
If you have nothing to say, And label, oh, the Bratcher, God bless him, eh? He did his best, eh? Can't discredit him. But you are sitting down there making people, oh, they ain't do nothing, and they for the upper class. I asked somebody the other day, you ever look at the PAM meeting? You know the amount of poor people. You know the amount of all the classes, all the parties having different classes. But people try to hang around the neck. So I want to know, why not include the work done by Mr. Eugene Hamilton as a member of the PAM? I don't know what he's now, right? But God bless him. You understand what I'm saying?
Certainly.
Yes.
In terms of the housing, because all of a sudden, is Timothy do everything? You better say what you do. You better say what he did. You better say what Patches did, both as members and ministers on the PAM ticket.
Thank you.
And please, y'all, please don't encourage division among the people. This one is that said Nubianites and Paulites. I mean, we should be past that, eh? So I expect better from all the politicians, from all the parties. The country was divided into, divided into how many? 5 now?
Mm-hmm.
That's not nice. All right, then.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution. Do we have another caller? Okay, we're going to allow...
All right, the renaming of the Irish Town Primary School. And I will start off by saying that is a very sensitive issue. It is something that I have been approached with, certainly in my capacity as Minister of Education. The renaming of schools and projects in general normally come out of a lot of consultation and community discussion. That is one that has come up, but as you see, Ms. Henry alone was able to bring up 3 different names. And so it is something that can be engaged again. What stuck out to me from her comments, however, was the fact that, Irish Town, the name Irish Town, brings with it a certain connotation. And out of my representation of the people of Irish Town, which is in Central Bastille, must be a change in the connotation. That for me has to be the focus of my representation of those people, to change the connotations affiliated, the current connotations affiliated with the name Irish Town and the Irish Town Primary School. That's why one of the first, if not the first thing I spoke about was the redevelopment of the Irish Town Bay Road. Because Irish Town and Matonite must no longer be synonymous with gangs and crime and poverty.
Right.
We need to change that. And that is the long-term vision that I have for that particular area of the constituency, to change the connotations to, I want to go to Irish Town, I want to live in Matonite.
Mm-hmm. Let's just take a quick break to take this call. Good morning and welcome to the movement.
Well there, good morning. It's Calvin James. Hi, John, how are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. Morning.
Yes, it's good to hear all the plans you have there. I want to commend you for a number of the things that you said this morning. I have 2 questions. One is to do with the development of Irish Town. And I was just wondering if you know of any further development that's going around the fort, from OTI around to Fort Thomas Hotel with the undermining of the roads. Was there any plans in place to kind of address that matter? Because I think it's very, very serious. I had a look there a few weeks ago, basically from engineering background, even though I'm not a civil engineer. But I think it's something that really should be prioritized. So I'm just wondering if there's any plans that you know of for that. That's the first question. The next question I had is regarding cricket. Again, I want to commend you for bringing all the cricket here. I think it's very, very good, especially bringing it to the public and the wider Caribbean and the world. But I have a concern that's bothering me for years, John. And that is, what developmental plans are in place to develop primary school and secondary schools cricket? I've been agitating the St. Kitts Cricket Association for years about this, because I know of no programs that is right across the island in regarding developing primary school and secondary school cricket in any general sense, and having semi-finals and finals playing at Warner Park. I believe that's an area that we're missing. We're hosting, we're bringing all the business, but there's no junior players that is coming through. No certified programs. And I believe that's the area that is missing. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that you have in place for that. That's my concern. Thanks.
Thank you, caller.
All right, thank you for those two questions, and I also want to say congratulations to you, Mr. James. I saw something in the media that your own sporting complex has been approved. You and I have discussed it many times. I'm familiar with your proposal, and I'm happy to see that you are finally getting somewhere in respect of that. And you have my full support. Anything to do with development of sport has my full support. In relation to the issue around the fort, and for those who don't know, the road and the cliffside and that around Fort Thomas and that area have suffered undermining from the ocean, in particular there. It is something that has been discussed at length. I know Public Works is involved in negotiations or discussions to see how best to deal with it. You've had private professionals who have made contributions in terms of suggestions and discussion points on how to best deal with it. People like Doug Gillanders, and so is very active in the fight to get that done. And so there is, I spoke earlier about the project which had been approved for the Irishtown Road, and I suspect that it included addressing that as well. And so that is something that needs to be fast-tracked. I, for one, believe Public Works is an entity which requires a lot more beefing up so that we can address more of these critical projects simultaneously. But there's a plan in place, and it is certainly something that I am familiar with and will be pushing.
We're going to pause. We're going to ask John to stick a pin here, and we're going to pause and take this call. Good day. Sure. This is The Movement.
Yes. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. I'm calling in response to the minister there with this step.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm calling from Nevis. Mm-hmm. And I can talk to about the step. I have a little small business, and it's for a long time I asked him to get a worker with me, because the business is not a big business. It doesn't pay enough to pay somebody. Mm-hmm. So I wanted one worker, and every time I go there and talk to them, they say they have to talk to the people in St. Kitts. They close it down. It's not open, and all these ring around. So I can attest to what the gentleman is saying. I don't know how it works, but the work that I do, I am in a little business, and the business that I have, I think they should have, Navy should have their own money to do that. They could choose whoever they want to, not to have to depend on St. Kitts to say, give to this person or give to that person, because the people in Nevis, they know who really need the help. Mm-hmm. You understand? So I think they shouldn't have to decide to give Nevis. Nevis should have its own setup. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to say.
Yes, and I think it's fair. I think it's a fair assessment.
So I don't think everything have to be headed by government in St. Kitts. And sometimes a lot of things you have to go to St. Kitts for. You know, that's why I think St. Kitts people always believe that they on top of us, because they figure that, well, we the underdogs, you know. So I can really attest to that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that input. I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
All right. Yes, thank you, caller, for that point. Again, that was the lack of the fair share we spoke about, and just in how she expressed it, I think to even the Ruffin program, another program held under the office of the Prime Minister, where for years we were being told that program is no longer, it's discontinued, yet all of a sudden persons' roofs are being done because the PM has the power to authorize who must get from who mustn't get.
Okay, we're going to allow for this call. So we say good morning and welcome to the movement.
Hello, good morning, Miss Laverne Keynes.
Good morning, Miss Bernice.
And Mr. Powell.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't worry with Mr. Timon. Right here, we got Crystal Harbour burn right now. Crystal Harbour over there on fire. What he do, he undermine you all. And everybody say when Mr. Sean he gone, he was still with you all, he should have gone. And do not stay down here with him, but don't you forget me calling Sean in the morning and ask him, you don't forget me. Because he had an aim. And you know why I ain't voting, man. Even if I voting for you this time, because I vote for you on me from 89 till now. And you know why I get mad? When I saw what he doing over Lodge, where from, he's over there from Miss Keynes, over Atlas Barn, and then real up for that. After Bart Susan Place, I'm going to turn it into told me problem. I'm going to make I think I was talking straight. Turn into the bank, that place into a government bank. I think it should be another bank, not government bank, like National Bank. That's my feeling, eh? And when I saw those going down below the center, the new center, man, Miss Keynes, he could have repaired. He had a center done up in the village already, long time. I went there ready to when they have somebody pass away, and I knew the person because from over there, and I went to the get together after the funeral. And all I could have done, he went and built a new one. He used to boast, and I didn't like that. And below the center, what I see with my two eyes them, I get my head swell.
Okay.
7 house for who? How I going to handle them, the Mr. Powell, because I ain't right, Why they to have 7 house out of the development bank and nobody going to know how their money go?
Okay, let's give him the chance. Let's give him a chance to answer them because he only has about 5 minutes left. So he's going to certainly answer your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you too.
That will get me mad.
Thank you. Take care, Bernice.
Thank you for that and for the encouragement. And I want to encourage you to keep the faith. You have to come out and support Pam. Don't allow yourself to be frustrated by the actions of the outgoing Prime Minister and administration. These are the frustrations that we've seen by ordinary people across the length and breadth of this country. And this is why my colleagues and I walked away from that administration, and it is to right those wrongs when we go back, when we are re-elected after the next general elections. Again, another example of the development bank being used by Timothy Harris and his brother, who runs the development bank, in a way that is not transparent. We have the NHC, where is the development bank building houses. Who are these houses going to be made available to? And why are they only being done in constituency number 7? Central Basin needs housing too. We've not had any new housing built in the last 2 years. And so that's a fair share. And that's not coming from me. These are ordinary citizens of St. Kitts and Nevis who can see it. It is clear. It is plain for us all to see. Just to answer Mr. James's last question about cricket development, and I spoke about the jump starting or rehabilitation of the Len Harris Cricket Academy. That's the first thing. I know he spoke specifically to cricket in schools. So when I assumed office, you had Keith Atherton who had responsibility for the academy at the point in time. In rehabilitating the academy, I recognized that it couldn't operate. We couldn't do everything through the academy. You had to have the school program in order to really start identifying those who had exceptional talents and all that to then drive. You needed something to drive the top talent into the academy. And so it was, well, we tried to get Chef Keith from the academy over into the Department of Sport to help specifically with developing that school cricket program. Unfortunately, that did not work out. And so we are still, well, up to when I was here, we were still looking at other persons who we could bring in addition to the coaching staff exactly there. I say Keith because we all know about his expertise and his cricket exploits. And so he would have been a good person, similarly to how we brought in Kim Collins within the Department of Sport to do the same thing with athletics in the schools. So it is something that we're still working on. The reality is we've not been able to have cricket in schools in the last 2 years because of COVID, but we're now free to do that. I expect to see all of these athletic competitions, whatever sporting competition it is, being returned in their full capacity in the upcoming school year. And when re-elected, it is something that I will continue in terms of building out that school cricket program to then funnel our top athletes, top cricketers into the academy and use that as another stepping stone to the Cricket West Indies Developing Players Program.
Thank you. I think you have discussed quite a mouthful of ideas and projects and plans for your constituency, and I would think that your constituents would be very satisfied that, given your performance in those 2 short years, to reconsider you for perhaps five more years, and perhaps beyond that, because you're still a young man. But we are really out of time now, and I want to thank you, Jonel, for coming to this platform, to this forum, the movement, to share your ideas and your plans, and to let people, dialogue with you. Not everybody would want to come to your office, to your constituency office. Some people like, I guess, to some extent, the unanimity behind a phone call.
Correct.
So I hope that you were able to answer a lot of questions, even if people didn't ask them. Perhaps something you shared that would have clarified something in their minds. And now they can weigh up everything, because never before, I don't think that we could recall having a three-way vote in constituencies. And so people now have a lot to weigh up and a lot to consider. So I want to ask you before you go, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident is Jonel Powell that he will take constituency number 2?
10.
Well, if you want to, I give you 2 more sentences before we wrap up after that.
All right. No, but we've gone through a lot of things that I've done. I haven't even been able to touch on all that. I didn't even speak to the fact that I had redone the whole pavilion down at the Gardens playing field. That was one of the first things I did, which needed a lot of help. And the plans that we have for the further redevelopment, we've already put in new basketball rings, for example. We're going to resurface the court on the basketball court, the netball court. The tennis court material is already on island, and we're just waiting on the experts to come out of Antigua to do it, because it's a special process in terms of the gardens. We've done work and provided support for Cooley and the gang, in Dorset Park. So there's so many things that I was able to get done in the 2 short years, but more importantly, the plans, the doable plans, the realistic plans that I've spoken about, but plans that are designed to touch people and to improve and empower persons' lives. So that whole entire redevelopment of Central Bastia is more than just putting a nice-looking boardwalk. It is about creating housing opportunities for persons, about creating job and commercial opportunities for people to start business or expand existing businesses. We are not about, and I am not about, giving a man a fish. This thing about where people have to rely on a politician and run to a politician every time they need a job, they need a house, they want a piece of land. We need to do away with that and empower persons to be in a position to get it on their own without needing a political favor. and creating an equitable access to these resources so that where, for example, low-income housing through NHC is needed, the people who need it and qualify for it get it, and the correct people getting it. If you qualify to get assistance to the poverty alleviation program and get $500 a month, you should be able to access that fund without having to run to a politician. And so that is the transparency, that is the accountability that we want to return to a system of government. I didn't even speak about carnival and culture and the fact that we were able to have virtual carnival, the fact that in COVID, where people could not come home for traditional carnival, they were able to access all of the activities from Juve to Mesenkits to Calypso tents and shows virtually. Therein, we had more people attending carnival than ever before. The most successful Mesenkits program show in our history, thanks to a lot of the pay-per-view and all those nationals and citizens abroad who were able to tune in there. And the fact that we've already identified the new home of Carnival, which is just off the Kim Collins Highway, next to, as part of the development of the Royal Bastia Valley Park, National Park. We've already identified the area, and an area where we are going to build out a new carnival city up there. We have the space to do it. It'll be something that will be available for like in Nevis, for events and bars and commercial opportunities all the time, as well as a concert area, which would be large enough to host any shows, host all the fetes, the Cooler Fetes and the Inception Fetes, as well as music festival. Mm-hmm. It decentralizes things from downtown. You have more parking opportunities. You have more facilities in place, new facilities in place, and it will be yet another opportunity to engage our entertainment industry and give them access to venues to have more functions and that sort of thing and make money. So there are just so many things that we can't speak everything in one show. But I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to come on. Congratulations on the show. I've been following it. You've been doing a fantastic job highlighting my colleagues, making them look good. I hope the same has happened for me.
Your work is speaking for itself. I didn't have to do a lot.
So thank you to Win FM for facilitating us, and to all the callers, the listeners who engaged us or who've been listening. Thank you. It's great to have your feedback. Whether you like me or not, whether you agree with me or not, it's good to have your feedback, because at the end of the day, I represent all of the people.
Thank you, Jonel. We hope that minds have been changed, because I think you made a good case of your work and your future projects. And so I hope that the listeners really had a good opportunity today to weigh up all of the evidence, if you will, and then at the right time would make that determination. I want to thank you so much. We started late, so we're over time, but we're still within time. We want to thank you so much for tuning in today, and look forward to speaking again with you and to you, and have you engage in us next Tuesday at 10. This is The Movement on Win FM. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
The views and opinions expressed in this program are solely those of the participant or caller and do not reflect the views of Win FM 98.9. Win FM reserves the right to disconnect any caller who infringes the law or offends the right of any person. The station will also refuse to take any call from any person who, in Win FM's considered opinion, is likely to expose the station to liability for statements made on the air.
You found the sound. 98.9 Win FM.